All right, guys, episode 16 of Talk About Town, the Louisville podcast. Give us a share, give us a like, subscribe. Chad, we got a pretty cool guest today because this one, we just started talking before and it's like I didn't want it to end. Let's just keep talking.
Let's keep that conversation going. And good morning. I'm doing an AM recording. I'm excited.
Yep. Let's get it rolling.
Recorded live from Louisville, it's Talk About Town, the Louisville podcast. And now, your hosts, Neil Cox and Chad Hennessy.
Hey, Ron White here. I'm nowhere to be found. You're listening to Talk About Town, like I give a...
So, Neil, I'm really excited about our guest today, Officer Dexter Pitts. Sorry about that. Dexter,
it's all good.
Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. And Officer Dexter Pitts, one thing that he is here for is his new book, I Am Pitts, Memoirs of an American Patriot. I'm actually excited to sit down and read this now that I have a copy myself.
Yeah, man, I promise you will enjoy it. I've gotten a lot of good reviews on the book. I've had 2 New York Times bestselling authors that actually read it and told me, like, dude, this is freaking phenomenal, especially for my first book, because it took me 7 years to write.
So we just got to get it out there then.
It's awesome, Dexter.
Definitely.
And, like we were talking about before, I mean, we're here to promote all the good that's going on in Louisville, just to try to be another stream of information for the public. And, we appreciate you reaching out to us. And any local author out there, we're going to do our job to try and get the message out.
Yeah, absolutely. Come promote your book with us. So you are born and raised Louisville, is that right?
No, actually, so I'm a kind of a transplant. I was actually, my parents are from Mississippi in the Delta and Bolivar County. Literally, my family grew up picking cotton, man, and my father decided he did not want to live that life because my grandfather worked in the cotton fields for 60 years.
Oh,
man.
wow.
And he was like, that ain't the life I want. So he joined the Army, and I was born in Fort Knox, Kentucky in 84.
There you go.
So, we moved around a whole bunch. I mean, man, we were in Germany when the wall came down in 89, and we moved all over the country to California, and then we ended up settling here. So my dad retired in 97, and I lived in Hardin County, Radcliffe most of that time.
Is that, a lot of Army brats that move around a lot of times, they'll kind of base that, hey, maybe where you went to high school. Like, where were you at for your high school years?
North Hardin.
Okay.
I'm sure you know Andre Woodson, UK
Absolutely.
quarterback.
Yeah.
I've known that cat since, 3rd grade.
Really?
Yeah. My claim to fame is in Little League in Fort Knox, I broke his wrist.
Well, he broke my heart, and Stevie got loose. I'll tell you that when he threw that bomb against he basically ended Steve Cragthorpe before Steve Cragthorpe even began. So, shout out to Andre Woodson.
That's a good dude. We actually live in the same neighborhood now.
Really?
Yeah, I knew he was in town. I think he does some training and stuff like that, if I'm not mistaken.
He does, and I think he's a big wig over at Amazon too, man. So, man,
That's awesome.
Oh, really?
Oh, man, it's so good to see somebody I grew up with doing so well, and he's got a wonderful family, man.
It's awesome.
Oh, great dude.
Yeah. He had a sniff in the NFL. I think he had a couple years.
Yeah, he had about a year or two.
Yeah. Was you all coming back to the area, was that your parents saying, we've been a bunch of places, this is the one we liked?
I really don't know what made my parents settle in Radcliffe. If I could think of anything, it's the fact that possibly where my family's from in Mississippi is about 8-hour drive. And then the other side of my family, my mom's family, everybody kind of left Mississippi and migrated up north to Milwaukee. So it's kind of a middle point for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably has something to do with it. But I mean, I'm kind of glad they did. It's one of those things where, when you're growing up, you kind of hate where you're from and want to go elsewhere. And so for me, it was like when I graduated high school, I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. Joined the Army, went to Iraq, and I was like, I can't wait to go home.
Even Hardin County right now has changed so much since you grew up there, or went to high school, I should say. The whole, greater E-Town area is really just booming. It is. Yeah.
Growing, man. And now they have actually sell liquor in Hardin County. When I was growing up, it was a dry county. We used to have to go to Meade County to go get some
booze.
Yeah. It's funny. I had the same experience. I wanted to get out of Louisville, out of Kentucky, period. Wanted nothing more. I'm pretty well traveled, and now I'm glad I live here.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great place.
Yeah, so other places are great for traveling. Like there's a lot of people that live here and leave here. Like, I'm going to Florida. I'm like, and then you see the hurricanes. I'm like, this is why I say Florida is for vacationing, not living.
That's right.
Well, I'm in the insurance business. Literally about 2-3 weeks ago, was referred from a mortgage friend of mine, a couple moving in to Louisville from Florida. They're not from here. They had found this through some friends. And I said, you lived in Florida. Why? I mean, you're down in the beach. Why did you want to move up to Louisville? And they're like, it's one thing to be there on vacation for 7 or 10 days. But yeah, you drive past it, there's the beach on your left, but you still have to go to work. You still have to live. And they said, this is just more seasonal, comfort living.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell her, like, no matter what, you can get your dream job, dream woman, dream girl, dream car. After a while, it all becomes the same because it's just something you see every day.
I think Tom Brady feels the same way.
I know.
Yeah, Giselle definitely does not.
Yeah. I get that where awesome stuff just becomes kind of routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just part of your everyday life,
true.
man.
It's
That's why
true.
I'll say, like, I love visiting Florida. I don't want to live there because I like where I'm at.
Yep. I got a network that I'm a part of. There's a lot of real estate agents across the whole country. And like, I know one in Fort Myer right now, and Fort Myers gone.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
bad,
he got wiped out. Man.
Yeah.
That's sad, dude.
Yeah. Very bad shape.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'll be in Naples at the beginning of December. So I'm kind of I'm curious, like what am I going to see?
Well, not to talk too much about, Florida, but you also know, though, they're going to pump so much money down there just because the whole tourist it just runs the whole state. So, I mean, they'll recover.
Yeah,
It'll
have
take
to.
some time, but they'll recover.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your story because your book's a memoir.
Yeah.
And you've got an interesting story, and it kind of culminates with you're the only officer in the country that has written a book detailing what it's like to be on the front lines during 2020 in the mostly peaceful protests.
Exactly. Hit the nail on the head on that one, man.
But that is a great claim, and it's something I think you can run with. And you were telling us a little bit before we started recording that, whether there's any kind of pressure against, but there's a lot of stories out there. So I'm thrilled that you're taking the leap of faith and telling this story. And so let's hear a little bit about it. But I mean, Dexter, not the starting point, but a little bit about your childhood and what kind of led you up to today.
Oh, so man, my childhood, what people don't realize, like growing up in the military is a freaking wonderful experience, especially when you look at the world we live in today where everything is so kind of divided and the media is, making everybody against black, white, this person's a victim, this person's a predator. It was never that growing up, and I feel like America, back in the 90s, I feel like we had the secret sauce for unity in this country, man. It was never really about black and white. It was just like, hey, man, we're all cool, we're friends. Let's just go about our day and let's all hang out. And that was my experience growing up in the military. It was just the fact that I had friends. They wasn't my black friends. They was just my friends. They weren't my white friends. They were just my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends
absolutely.
from one of my best friends. His name was Yum. He was from Panama. So being part of the military, man, I had so much exposure to people who didn't look like me and people that weren't not like me. So diversity was the norm, and it wasn't forced. It's just what it was. And then when my dad retired out of the Army and we moved to Radcliffe, which is weird because Radcliffe is a military community. It's very diverse, but I remember it was the first day on the school bus after my dad retired and going to public school, and I see these black kids on the bus. I'm like, hey, what's up, everybody? Just being nice. And then the next thing you know, just they start in on me. Look at this black ugly nigga right here. Oh, he's so black. Oh, he's crispy. He's a tar baby. They called me Kingsford, bro. Like the charcoal. I was like, Jesus. In my mind, I thought we were all going to be friends. And man, it just started and that's when the whole race and color thing came into mind. So when people tell me, America's racist is white people are evil, I'm like, that's never been my lived experience. It's always been, for me, I used to get it from people that look like me because I was so dark skinned, and man, I was on the bus, man, and I would be terrified to go to school. And, my mom grew up in Mississippi. My mom, she had a lot of trauma from growing up in Mississippi, man, where she was dark skinned. And a lot of people don't realize colorism within the black community where it's the light skin versus dark skin, which comes from slavery, from where, dark skinned slaves worked the field and light skinned slaves worked inside the house. So that was that divide. My mom was dark skinned. And so she learned to bleach her skin when she was younger.
How about that?
Yeah. So, and when I was younger, my mom taught me to try to bleach my skin. And I did that thinking that it's going to make my life better, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, they're going to like me because I'm not as dark. They're making fun of me for being dark skinned. So if I change who I am, they'll be cool, you know. But man, it didn't realize until I got older how messed up that was. But it's not that my mom, she didn't do that from a place of hate.
She didn't. She thought she was.
She thought she was helping
out of love.
me.
I get
it was
it.
out of love,
I
you know. And I know it's messed up, but I love her for trying to help me. But you know, of course, you know, when you got trauma, you know, we pass our traumas down to our children and other people, man. And that's, I want to make sure I stop that with my family. I'm not doing that with my kids. And my daughter's beautiful. I tell her she's beautiful all the time. She's got dark skin. I let her know every day.
Yeah.
Beautiful, you know. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I don't want her to have that experience, but at the same time, you have to have that experience in life and that adversity, because that grows you, that develops your character, that makes you a better person and more well-rounded, because you're going to have adversities. So, you know, I had mine in life early, you know. So the weird thing happened, man. All those kids that made fun of me, man, we're a very religious family. And we grew up Southern Pentecostal.
Awesome.
So y'all see me jumping over these tables and shouting and running around.
Get the Holy Spirit.
It's the Holy Spirit in me, man. You know, but so we started praying, and next thing you know, man, all those kids kind of started going away. Like there were a lot of troubled kids, man, and they just started dissipating and going, like, getting in trouble, get kicked out of school. Some moved away, and the next thing you know, it was like they were gone, but I still had that reputation in school. It was like, oh, that's that really, really black dude, and oh, he's ugly. He's so dark skinned. You know, it was highly messed up. And the worst part was I was so much bigger than everybody else, but I was so soft and sensitive. Like, I was a mama's boy, man. I would always run to my mom.
Yeah, good heart, man. I mean, I get that.
Yeah, I had a good heart, but that too, it's one of those where you wear your heart on your sleeve. Yo, dude, I paid for it, man. So the funny thing was, when 9/11 happened, you know, and the tough side of me came out when I was like maybe 15, 16 when the towers came down, you know, and just something in me awoke, and I was like, man, I want to go fight.
Yeah, so I mean, just you kind of spilled the beans when you're born in '84, right? So yeah, I guess so. So you're probably about 16 years old. Were you in high school at that time?
Yeah, I was in high school. I was not in high school that day. I was actually at home faking sick. Yeah, didn't want to go to school, man. I was like, Mom, I'm
taking today off.
I don't feel. She was like, you better not leave this house. I know that much. I remember I woke up. It was like midday, and I turned on the news, and I didn't see the tower, so I saw a plane. It was the plane in Pennsylvania that landed in the field, and I was like, oh, it's just a plane crash. Okay, whatever. Now let's go back to sleeping. I woke back up like 2 hours later. You know, there's just chaos, and the towers are coming down. I was like, oh my God, you know, and it was that combined with the movie Black Hawk Down coming out.
Great
That's when
movie.
I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go into the infantry in the Army.
So at the time, your dad's already retired.
He's already retired. He was a tank mechanic.
Curious, when 9/11 happens and he's retired, did you see like a fuel of patriotism in him at that point, even though it was, you know, he was past it?
Man, my dad was a very, very quiet man, very reserved, old, black man from Mississippi, man, very stoic and just very. I don't think I've seen my dad smile too many times. Yo, he never really said anything about it, but my mom, me and her would talk, and just, you know, she could tell like there was something with me that was changing, and I never personally, like, growing up, I did not want anything to do with the military, because I felt like the military would always take my friends from me. We'd make friends, and then, you know, it's time to move. So I was like, I don't want anything to do with the military. So I remember when I took my ASVAB test in like 10th grade, I just kind of abacadabbed it, and you can't join the military. I was like, cool, I don't want to anyway. And then so I go back in, I'm like, hey, I want to join the Army. I want to go fight. And they looked at my scores like, not with these scores, buddy.
Retake it.
Yeah, so they actually gave me some points. I was like, hey, we'll give you some points, man. Like, so you don't have to retake the test, but you're not going to get a bonus or anything. And I wanted to be a Ranger. So I was like, man, let me get that Ranger slide. Like, nah, with those scores, you can retake it. I was like, and of course, my recruiter, I don't know if y'all know any military recruiters. Don't worry about it, buddy. You can go to Ranger school later.
Okay.
Yeah. So that didn't happen. But so, man, I joined the Army in August 5th, 2003, man.
Awesome.
And I was stationed at Fort Drum, New York with the 10th Mountain Division. And I don't know if y'all know about them, but they are the most deployed unit in the military, man.
Oh.
So I knew when I got to Fort Drum, I got married to my high school sweetheart then. Got to Fort Drum November, and rumors started swirling. Next thing you know, we were on a plane to Iraq in June of 2004. And that's kind of when everything, my whole thing in high school was, oh my God, I'm going to miss the war. Because I remember my buddies that graduated the year before, like they were joining the Marines. They're a part of the initial push in 2003. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to miss the whole thing.
Don't worry, it'll last decades.
Yeah. We literally thought it was going to be like the Gulf War 91. Yeah. Like it was just going to be hit it in and out. And that 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that, the war's over now. And I'm like, man, I realize how old I am now. When guys ask me like, man, what years were you in Iraq? I'm like, 04, 05. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
You've been out of yeah.
So you did 2 years in Iraq, is that correct?
So I did about 8 months. So we got there in June of 2004. And I went on leave in November of 2004. Came back in December. And it was on the day after New Year's, January 2nd of 2005. We were on patrol in Abu Ghraib. I don't know if do y'all know the name Abu Ghraib?
Yeah, that's the prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So needless to say, though, the whole prison scandal happened just after we got there. Mm-hmm. And so needless to say, when the Americans came into town, they were not a big fan of us. So it was so weird. Like I talk about it in my book was how you could, like that day was just so weird. Like I could feel something in the atmosphere shift and somebody was watching me. Mm-hmm. It's just the whole day I just knew like something bad's going to happen. And so we were in Abu Ghraib on Route Huskies, and where we were, it was this like 2-lane road going east and west. And across from us where we were sitting, man, we'd always park our vehicles. Like, so we had a column of 4 vehicles. We send 2 vehicles down like maybe a click. And then the other one, we send down the other direction. And we face one vehicle out this way, one vehicle out this way, and another one facing towards each other. So we could cover the road to make sure insurgents weren't planting bombs on the road.
Got it.
So we're sitting there. This is we could go to the same spot 3 nights in a row. One thing, if you rob a bank, you don't go back to that same bank the next day to rob it again.
Yep.
And these guys, I think a lot of American soldiers, we kind of dehumanize these soldiers. Like, these guys are idiots. They can't fight. They don't. No, we got the upper hand. We're the Americans. I'm Billy Badass over here walking around with my machine gun. Like, I wish somebody would, man. So they knew we were coming back. And before we went back that night, man, we got out of our vehicles. And I remember we swept the area to make sure the ground was untouched. And it was so weird because where we were, there was a house behind us and there was this Iraqi family. And I'm like, like these people come out every day, give us food and tea. And we went back that day and the house was dark. And there was nobody there. And I was like, that's strange. Like, where are they at? And so we're sitting in the Humvee. I'm in the gunner's hatch behind the machine gun. And I'm talking to my lieutenant like, so I got a bad feeling today about being here, man. And he's like, Pitts, we're going to be fine. What I need you to do is get down out the turret. You've been up there in the sun all day. You're losing your mind. You got these crazy feelings. Like just come down inside the vehicle, take a break. And I was like, all right. So I hop down off the turret and I walk over to this row of bushes to use the bathroom. And as I'm using the bathroom, like I get that chill up my spine. And I'm like, somebody's watching us right now. And I couldn't see him, but I knew I could feel him. And I remember I took my selector switch on my rifle and I switched it to full auto and I was just ready to spray bullets. And then I finished up, head back to the vehicle and I'm talking to my buddies. I'm like, man,
it's coming.
Like y'all feel this? Like, nah, man, we don't feel anything. I'm like, y'all notice that family's gone, right? Like they're not here. And they were like, yeah, that is kind of weird. So I hop into the driver's seat in the Humvee and my lieutenant, he's working on the Blue Force tracker. And I can already tell he's kind of annoyed, like dealing with whatever he's dealing with, So I'm like, LT, I got a bad feeling, man. I don't think we should be here. He's like, Pitts. I'm like, we're fine, okay? We're fine. We're parked tactically. If they start to sneak up on us, we'll see them coming. So we're sitting there. I'm like, all right, if you say so. And I was like, man, I'm going to just close my eyes for a second. I remember I take off my helmet and I kind of lay my head back. And it's so weird because I remember it kind of in 2 ways because I was knocked unconscious. And so I didn't have memory of what it was initially. At one point, I remember waking up on the ground looking at the stars. And I just remember this pain was like flowing through my body. And I was like, why does it hurt so much? And it felt like there was like 1,000 pounds laying on me, and I didn't know what was going on. Then the other part of me, I started getting my memory back, and I remember actually waking up in the Humvee. And it was weird. It was almost like an outer body experience I had to where it was like I was sitting, like I was in my seat, but I was like floating above my body, and I was like real close to my own face yelling like, wake up, man. You got to move. You're going to die. You got to get up. You got to move. And it was just like, I was like sucked back into my body. And I just remember it's just kind of like, in the movies, you know, it's like foggy and hazy. Then, it's slow motion. You hear somebody, pets, pets. And I'm just like, oh God, oh God. And then I saw my lieutenant's face like right next to me, and he's like, your door's wrecked, man. I'm gonna get you out of here. And I remember he pulled me by my shoulders, by my vest, over the center console because my side of the vehicle was completely destroyed.
Wow.
Man, he pulled me out when my body hit the ground, dude. I just yelled to the sky. And I didn't know what happened, but I just knew in that moment I was about to die. My 20-year-old life was over. And I'm laying on the ground in Iraq, and the ground was so cold, and the stars, just looking up at the sky like, man, this is it. Like, I don't want to die. I'm too young. Like, I had a new wife at home. Hadn't got a chance to live my life. I remember my doc came up to me and cut off my uniform, and my left arm was completely wrecked. Like, it was broken in multiple places. Looked like somebody just came up with a little bat and just bink, 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 just tore my arm to pieces, man. It was completely shattered. And, I could taste the blood and dirt in my mouth, man. You could smell the ammonium nitrate in the air. It was,
was it an ambush or an IED?
It was an IED. So they knew we were coming back. And these guys dug the hole because they knew, like, we've been in that same spot, same thing for 3 days. And they planted 2 155 artillery shells, loaded them down, and then we parked right on top of it. It was literally up under my butt, the explosion. Like, I took the entire blunt of the blast on my door. But I am lucky to be alive, man.
Yes, sir.
So
was anybody else in your unit injured that day?
Man, so it's weird. The guy that knew this was coming was the only one that was really seriously hurt. Everybody got their bells rung. Everybody got hurt, but everybody was like fine. I was like the one that was most critical. And so I know they put a splint on my arm, and they threw me into the other Humvee. And then we're driving back to the base, man, to take me to the hospital. Yeah. And I don't know who was driving, but I'm still to this day like, that son of a gun. I mean, he hit every pothole that you could imagine on this ride back home, man. And I'm dying like, oh, God. Just saying the Lord's Prayer over and over. And then I get to a point where I realize I'm actually going to live, but I knew it was going to be a long recovery. Yeah. I had my first surgery in Landstuhl, Germany, and they put a plate in my arm, rods, pins, and screws. I had my molars blown out. I had to go to the dentist to get my molars put back in. And, man, it was a horrible, horrible time. Even worse was the catheter they tried to put in, man. I remember I was like, it was right after we got hurt, and I was like, I really got to pee. And this beautiful Puerto Rican nurse, and I'm not in my best moment at this time, and I'm just like, man, I got to pee. Just roll me over on my side.
Let me just go.
Just let me go. They're like, no, we're going to put in a catheter. And I was like, look, just roll me to my side. Okay. She was like, we can't do that.
Oh,
so they
grabbed
me. They started putting in the catheter, and I just pissed all over this young, beautiful Puerto Rican nurse to this day. So sorry, man.
Probably not the first time.
No. This was long before the Chappelle skit.
That's right.
Way after R. Kelly.
Not to ask an obvious question, but was that the end of your active duty? Or?
Yeah. So my left arm, I don't know if you can see, but I'm still kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Oh, gosh.
I don't have full use of it. So it's stuck in pretty much a 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
So I can't really do much with it. But the Army decided, well, you can't be a machine gunner no more.
Yeah.
And they gave me the option to retake the ASVAB and try to reclass. But I was like, man, if I came in as an infantryman, I'm going to leave as an infantryman. And that's when I was like, I'm going to take the out. And so I got medically put out of the Army, retired. And then that's when I became a civilian, man.
And Purple Heart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. An actual Purple Heart. You had some guys I knew, like, man, a bomb went off. What happened? I got a small scratch right here.
Yeah. No, you earned it.
Unfortunately, man, we call that the enemy marksmanship badge.
Yep.
Everybody gets one when you get hurt. Like, it shows that the enemy knows how to effectively use their weapons.
Right.
And my Lord, did they?
Yeah.
No doubt.
So you come back, and is that when you joined the police force?
Man, so I got out in 2007. I didn't join the police force till 2009. I was kind of stuck in that, like, what do I do with life now? Yeah. And my identity had become a soldier, and I literally had no clue. Like, college was like, I don't want to go to college, but started going to school. So one of the people that really helped me was my occupational therapist at Walter Reed. Man, I was like, man, this guy, he had literally helped me get back to being me and feeling like a soldier. And so even though I didn't have full use of my arm, he would like bring in a rifle for me and let me strip the rifle down, and just put it back together. And even worse, like he'd be like, man, let's go shopping. I was like, oh, yeah, let's go shopping. So I grab a grocery cart. No. You don't need a grocery cart. And then Steve would be like, hey, why don't you go grab that pack of sodas right there? Sure. And I reached down with my right hand. He'd be like, no, your left hand.
Yeah.
And I'd just be walking around the store holding this pack of sodas, just sweating. And then we go to the register, like, I don't want those sodas. Then we just leave the store. So
he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. He was an evil genius, man. I told him when my arm got better, I was going to use it to choke him out. But man, because of him, I was able to get my life back together. And I was like, man, I want to do that same thing. So I started going to, y'all remember JCC back in the day.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, I went to JCC for occupational therapy initially, and I was just like, this is so boring. Oh my gosh, it was boring. You can't, I told my buddies, you can't go from combat to a cubicle.
Yeah.
That's kind of a hard transition, man.
Yep.
Go from carrying a machine gun to carrying a pen, and I was like, yeah, I'm not digging this too much. So, and I decided, I looked into doing business, and I was like, this is real dry. And then I remember seeing the old LMPD commercial on the TV, and I was sitting there looking like, oh man, that might be kind of fun. And so I hadn't got on the police department yet, but I was working at the VA hospital here as a housekeeper, man. So I was literally doing that and going to school, and I just decided one day I was like, you know what, I'm gonna put in to become a police officer.
Just question, with a little bit of limitation with your left arm, did that prohibit like you getting a board or anything like that?
So I thought, when I took my physical test, man, he's an old LMPD, retired LMPD Sergeant Barry Denton. Freaking love Barry Denton. Freaking great guy. So I remember seeing him at the physical test. He was looking at my arm like, I don't know if that's going to work, buddy, because I couldn't put my arm behind my head for my sit-ups. So they let me do the test, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to blow this test out the water. And so I did the test, passed everything, and I was just like a stressful 3 days waiting to hear back from DLCJT because of my injury, see if they would let me, go forward. And they told me, it's like, yep, you're good to go. I was like, oh, thank God.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you patrol Louisville for, 10 years, I think you said, right?
So initially, started 8 years. So I started off in the second division in the West End, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, brother, that was eye-opening. It's so weird because what a lot of people don't realize that I guess today we're trying to make the black experience in America the same across the board for everybody, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because when I started policing in an all-black area, people would come up to me and be like, you know how it is in the hood, brother? You know how it is? I'm like, no, sir, I don't.
Yeah.
This is not my lived experience. I remember people would tell me about the projects in Louisville, like Park Hill and all these projects and how bad they were. So in my mind, I'm thinking it's going to be like the Feed the Children commercials in Africa, people running around with no shoes on and, flies everywhere. There's just complete, devastation and poverty. My first time going to the Park Hill, I go in there, man, there's this giant big screen TV, food everywhere. Like Jordan, I was like, they living good up in here. Like, oh, what? And so it wasn't what I thought, and then it's when I really realized how different people's lives are just because, you're black in America, that doesn't have to be your existence. But if that's what that's your world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I had no clue because I was never exposed to that growing up. I grew up in the military.
Yep.
I didn't know anything about that. I lived in Milwaukee for 1 year with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that was bad enough. But my mom worked so hard to keep us from that type of lifestyle, worked 2 jobs. So we lived in the hood, but I didn't get the true hood experience until I actually became a cop in the hood. And man, I saw a side of people that I never knew existed. It's crazy how with people, your experiences, man, like we try to put our experiences off on everybody else. And man, and I realized that's something I couldn't do because this is where I was policing. This is people's home. Mm-hmm. Then people talk about the West End, like, it's horrible. The people here are awful. The people in the West End are not horrible. The people in the West End are great people. Mm-hmm. It's just with anything, you have that small segment of the population.
Gives a bad
name for everybody because there's so many people that when I would patrol down there, shake my hand, thank me for my service, But there's also, you get a lot of, we don't interact with people having good days on the police department. We interact with people on their worst days. It's a very good point.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
So anytime I see somebody, it's always, man, F you, bro. F the police, man. I hate you. Hope you all die. And it was just like, but when you deal with that every day, that starts to become your perception of everybody. And that's not the case. And so weird, I had an older black officer when I started telling me, he was like, man, don't police in your own neighborhood. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, don't police people that look like you. I was like, why? He was like, you will see. And that's and now.
But did you even have a say at that point? I mean,
Oh yeah, I did. I knew I wanted to be.
Okay.
I wanted to be where the action was, man. I mean, it was weird. My first homicide I went to was on I think it was like 43rd and 44th and Broadway. It was this young white girl, man, and I actually wrote about it in the book. And man, she had got shot straight center through her chest, and she was bleeding out. I remember like she was laying on this little concrete wall, and she just kept screaming like, "Man, please don't let me die! Please don't let me die!" And I was like, oh my God, like this is like real. And you could just see the blood running down, and you just saw the life leave her. And it was weird, I never saw anybody die in Iraq. It was like my combat experience was weird to where I never fired a shot. We didn't lose anybody in my company. Though we all, we had people got hurt, but our Bravo company got destroyed over there, lost a bunch of guys. But our Alpha company, we didn't have any of that. I never fired my weapon. And here I am in Louisville, and I'm seeing death for the first time in a violent manner, and it's just like, holy goodness, like this is real, man.
Yeah, eye-opening for sure.
Yeah. And so then you go serve in Arizona on Border Patrol, right?
Yeah. But before we get to that, I would say, so when I was a rookie, what really changed me was the suicide, the death of my mom while I was on duty.
You had mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, though, I had just got through with the academy. I was out of the academy, and I was doing my first phase of field training out here in the Newburgh area. And we're sitting on the Ironman detail, and I get a call on my phone, and somebody's like, "Hey, this is a officer or detective from the Radcliffe Police Department. You need to get to the hospital, University of Louisville." I'm like, and then they say, "Your mother's been shot." I'm like, and I hang up my phone because I'm like, man, somebody's playing a joke. This is a horrible joke to play.
Yeah.
So, man, he calls back, and I'm like, man, stop playing on my phone. Like, this is not funny. He's like, "Officer Pitts, this is not a joke. This is real. You need to get to the University of Louisville. Your mother's been shot." So my buddy Officer Savage, puts me in his police car, man. And I mean, we're scooting off towards U of L from Prospect. Man, I mean, the tires are screeching, the brakes are burning. And when I get there, and I remember going into the U of L, to the ER entrance, like, "Where's Idella Pitts? Where's Idella Pitts, man?" And they take me to her. And the first thing I notice is the brown paper bags on her hands. And that's one of the chapters in my book. It's called The Brown Paper Bags. Because that was the first thing I saw with my mom, was her hands were taped with these brown paper bags to preserve evidence. And I look at her head, and I can see the bloody gauze, the crimson red gauze. And I'm just sitting here like, yo, who did this to you? Like, I'm going to find whoever did this. They're going to pay. And well, what it turned out to actually be was my mother had shot herself. Her and my father were married for 28 years. And they found suicide letters, and she was detailing in the letters how controlling my father was, and how, he used to beat her. And the thing was, never saw any of this growing up. Everybody,
it was hidden from
it was hidden, man. And nobody realized it. And I would see stuff when I was growing up, like my parents would argue periodically, slap it out a couple times, and then we just kind of go on. Thought it was normal. I didn't really think it was anything else, but next thing you know, I'm 26 in my police uniform, and I'm like, the nurse is asking me, like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "What do you mean what I want to do?" There's like, "She's on life support. Like, there's been no brain activity for hours. The only reason she's alive is because of the equipment." And it's so weird because me and my mom had always been super close. Like, my mom, like, she flew to be with me in Walter Reed when she heard me crying on the phone, and she don't fly, man. And then she was always there for me. And I remember when I got married the second time, her and my wife didn't get along, and she and I fell out for the year before she died. But just before this incident, she and I started talking again, and she would always tell me, it was almost like when I was in Iraq, those small signs that we don't pick up on, and it was, she was like, "If anything ever happened to me, just let me go. Don't keep me on life support." And I'm like, why are you saying that? Like, you're going to live forever, man. You ain't going nowhere. You're always going to be here, right? And so, man, I'm sitting there at my mom's bedside, and I'm just like, man, I don't know what to do. And I'm praying, and I'm just like, "God, please bring my mom back to me." And the doctor's like, it's everything's been done that they can do, man. And I just remember my mom's voice, like, just let me go. And at 26 years old in my uniform, man.
It's tough, my friend.
Oh, brother, I had to make the hardest choice in my life, man. And pulling that plug, telling them to pull that plug. And I remember taking off my gear and going and sitting in the weight room. And I remember the nurse coming in there and telling me, "Sweetie, she's gone." And my whole world collapsed. And that moment, everything I knew left me, man. And it got to the point to where that was just the start of my downward spiral, where I had built this life, but it was a fake life I was living. I was married to this very famous person's daughter, and, and everybody's like, oh, he's got this great life. And man, I was miserable. And I mean, man, my sister ran off with the life insurance policy. I'm not talking to my father because he was involved with my mother's death. And, and I'm on the police department as a renegade. Then I'm out in the streets working, and I was not mentally ready to be working because I'm still dealing with my mom's suicide. And man, and so I go through the divorce. The next thing you know, I'm at work, and I'm starting to mess up at work. I'm still in training.
Sure.
And I put a guy in the police car. We get to the jail, and he's getting ready to walk into the jail, and they pull out this ice pick out his pocket. Oh my God. And my trainer, Dan Mason, he's like, the hell, man? What? Did you not search this guy? I was like, I don't know. I didn't care. And I was just like, oh my God. And the biggest thing with the police department is your reputation is everything, Like your reputation starts day one, And I came in with a good reputation, and man, it went away quick, man. And I mean, after I had an accidental discharge of my shotgun on a scene to a fake call. Oh, brother. Man, I was spiraling out of control. And it was at that point, where I decided, you know what, I was going to kill myself. So, my book starts out with me sitting in the FOP lot on Leisure Lane with my Glock in my lap. And I put it to my head and take the slack out the trigger. And I couldn't pull it. I didn't have the courage to pull the trigger. But lucky for me, I was like, you know what? I'm in the right profession for somebody to kill me. I'm a cop, and man, I just started, and I became so reckless. Like I would stop cars, be rude to people, just hoping that I would make them mad enough, and turn my back on the cars. I'm walking away, hoping somebody would have a pistol.
Death by citizen.
Yes.
Kind of the opposite of what some folks do. Huh.
Yeah. And my thing was, I always said to myself, like, he's going to be a monster to the public, but he's going to be my personal hero. I didn't have the courage to kill myself, man. And if it wasn't for one of my sergeants, who's a retired Marine, I don't know if y'all ever watched First 48, but Kevin Trees, he was a one-legged homicide detective.
Yes, yeah.
That was my dog, man. He was my sergeant. I mean, man, he took care of me. He pulled me aside. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? You're a freaking Army infantry guy, having an accidental discharge with your weapon. You're acting reckless, making traffic stops without calling off on traffic stops. And man, I broke down. That was the first time I had for real cried in years.
You need, let loose.
Yeah. And this is what I miss about how LMPD was back in the day. My major at the time, Major Chris Defect, man, freaking great dude, pulled me aside. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm fired. But, and by today's standard, everybody think, you're a black officer. They're going to get rid of you any chance they get. Man, they pulled me aside like, we love you. We're here for you. What do you need? I was like, I don't know what I need. They told me 30 days. Go take care of whatever you need to take care of. No questions asked. If that's not enough, come back. We'll talk about it. Get you some more time. We need you to get well. And man, the way LMPD took care of me then, my God, like I was on probation. They had no reason to keep me. They could have like, this guy lost cause and chucked me to the side, man. So they, just came around me, dude. And I slowly started to get better. Man, I put my life back together, man, and started going to counseling and therapy and slowly built a life. And that's kind of when I started coming into my own and realizing that all the problems I had in life was not because of other people or because of the white man. It's literally, Dexter, you're an idiot. You're making bad choices. And guess what? Bad choices have bad outcomes. And that's when I kind of started putting my life together. And so weird, man. Like I grew up in the church, but I kind of went away from the church after my second marriage because I was really hurt by the church. And, it's one of those where it's like, Jesus Christ, but you don't know Jesus Christ. So
I get it.
That's when I really started to dig into the word, man, and put my life together. And man, I met my new wife who I've known since 7th grade. And now, as I tell everybody, I was third marriage. I tell her, don't feel special, girl.
And now you were saying 2 kids, right?
10 years, 2 kids, man. And we've been together longer, both in the first 2 combined. So
that's fantastic.
I don't even know if I can count those 2, man. They weren't even 2 years, dude.
Right.
That's right. Air practice.
Yeah. And so you do Border Patrol for a bit, and then the 2020 mostly peaceful riots break out. Yeah. And you say, I'm coming home, right?
Yeah. So I left LMPD after, I was there for 8 years, worked in the West End, worked on the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force for 2 years, man. A freaking great job. Working with the feds is what gave me the itch to go federal. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, the feds are great. And that's why I was like, man, Border Patrol looks like it's policing, but on a federal level. And man, the dollar signs, I was like, my God. Because at that time I was paying like $1,300 a month for like childcare, and I was like, if I can make $100,000 a year, my wife ain't got to work, and I was like, I'm all in. So man, I'll tell you what, that Border Patrol Academy was tough. That's the hardest training I've ever been through.
You speak Spanish?
Man, not even the least.
Yeah.
that was the worst part, man. It was like I almost quit the first week when it was like, you got to learn the Spanish days of the week. And then like week 3, it was like, your Spanish test this week is a felony traffic stop all in Spanish.
Oh,
man, my mind was like,
yeah.
man, I'm a young guy from Kentucky. I don't know anything about Spanish. And so I'm freaking graduate the Border Patrol Academy, and I get sent down to Naco, Arizona, where I'm working on the Brian A. Terry station, and I like the job being out in the field, but it's kind of like the Army where it's like they show you all the good parts of the job in the commercials. They don't show you the other side of the job, and I'm just sitting there like in front of a computer, like, inputting all this information, and I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. So I go to a small police department down there thinking it's going to be the same, but I'm not enjoying it. They were great to me. The Sahuarita Police Department were awesome people, but something was missing, man. And then I'm sitting in Arizona, and I'm looking at the riots the first night down home, the protests, and I'm like, man, I've been in Louisville for a long time, and I was on SRT, and I'm thinking, nothing's going to happen here. We've had people protest before. They go do their thing, they get done, they walk by. It's Louisville, and they be like, hey, thanks for being out here. It was never an issue, never a problem, man. Next thing you know, I'm like, nothing's going to happen. I'm watching the live stream. I remember seeing somebody pick up that brick, that giant rock, and they threw it through the downtown area patrol's office at 2nd and Jefferson. I was like, oh, my God. And then it just broke loose, and I'm just sitting there watching like, what is happening to Louisville right now? This is not Louisville. And, man, I looked at my wife, and I was like.
And you go back.
Yeah, we're going home.
Yeah.
And, man, we had bought a house. I mean, we were set on staying in Arizona. I loved Arizona, but it just didn't like the work piece, but, man, I made that call. I was like, I'm coming home. So I signed. So I guess the riot started May 28th. I got rehired and signed back in on June 15th. And and then I had to do 3 days of admin. And it was June 15th. And I think it was June 20th where I actually hit the street, and it was the article they just put out about the protesters down at the bridge that took over the bridge. And that was like my first time back on the SRT, man. I'm just sitting there just like, man, I'm home. I was happy to be home, but man, it was not the same home I left, man.
Thrown into the fire.
Oh man, and it was very surreal, just sitting on the front line, and then I have these angry black protesters come up to me, and they start saying some of the most evil, foul things I've ever had said to me. Like, no human being should talk to another human being this way. And my God, I mean, fuck you. I'm sorry about the language, but
That's all right.
You're good.
So I don't hold back on the language in the book because I want people to know what was said. But it was like, fuck you, you ugly ass, faggot ass, black ass nigga. Like, I know you like sucking that white dick, you fucking traitor, race traitor. We hope you fucking die out here. We're gonna find you and your kids. We're gonna kill your families. We're gonna rape your wives. Fucking, eat y'all. But it was, and I mean, it just wasn't one time.
It was the entire time.
It was day after day after day, and it was just, when I was in Iraq, man, I wasn't really as scared because I had a whole crew of guys around me. We had a defined enemy, and we had high-powered weapons, machine guns, grenades that we could call in air support. But we were on a battlefield in Louisville, but this wasn't a war. This wasn't a enemy. This is American citizens. These are not our enemies.
And you can't react. You just have to stand.
You got to stand there. Yeah. And I just remember standing there like, man, like, and then just what changed for me was, I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I'm all about the Constitution. I encourage anybody, to have a weapon, man. But protesting here changed for me when I saw people exercising their Second Amendment rights. And I was like, oh, bro, the people are coming out with, fully kitted out AR-15s, AK-47s, all kinds of weapons, and I'm just like, oh, wow, this is real. And I'm like, but I can't be offended because this is what I signed up to do, to ensure that people's rights were intact. And they are allowed to carry these weapons in public. It's their Second Amendment right. I can't come against that.
Yeah.
Then the whole racial thing started where, we would have, the whole Black Lives Matter thing going on, and I've never been a fan of Black Lives Matter just because I've worked in the black neighborhood for years, and I've never seen any of these protests down in the neighborhood when a young black child gets shot and killed, So I'm just kind of like,
I get it.
What's really going on, But it just being pushed every day where people are coming at me with AK-47. Of course, they're not aiming it at me, but they have it. And it's just like, man, what is going on? And I remember my biggest fear during that time was, I don't know if y'all remember the 2015 Dallas PD ambush. It was during the Black Lives Matter march, man. A guy went rogue and shot and killed 5 officers, and they used the robot bomb to kill him. And that was my biggest fear during this time was like, man, so as y'all saw the videos, all we do is go stand literally in the middle of the street like it's Revolutionary War style and just kind of
stand still.
Just stand still, and just you have no cover, and you can't pull out your weapon. And it's just like, so we just standing there. And all my thing was like, man, I don't want to get caught in an ambush. And man, it was the day of the Breonna Taylor verdict, where they brought the verdict, and they decided the only person who was going to be charged was the one officer for the one endangerment charge, So in my mind, I'm like, man, it's really getting ready to go down. And it was the same thing like in Iraq that day. It was like, man, we're getting ready. I could feel something in the air. I mean, there were people, a lot of the people, the mostly peaceful protests, man, it was not a lot of people from Louisville. There were people from Louisville, but a lot of those were transplants.
I was about to ask that. I mean, it felt like a lot of people were bussed in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, a lot of people were bussed in, brother. I remember seeing this guy, this tall white guy with long hair wearing a skirt and like high heels, and he had this drum, and he was beating this drum. And I was like, didn't I just see this dude on the news in Seattle the other night? Literally, I was like, he's not from here. There are so many people that weren't from here.
Were the pallets of bricks or whatever, is that a real thing?
That was a real thing, and it was actually wrote about it in my book, and it was on the news. But I remember seeing a U-Haul truck pull up downtown, and the back of that U-Haul truck went up, and then people just started passing out weapons and shields, and I'm like,
Lord,
I was like, man, they don't want to this ain't protest. They ready for a fight. They want to fight. Now I was like, well, let's go do it. And then we got the call to Bardstown Road. A lot of people call it the Battle of Bardstown or the Rumble on the Highlands. The Rumble in the Highlands. And that was, man, dude, I made news that day because there was a guy that had a gun on him, and he wouldn't give us his hands, man. And we had to use physical force on him, man. And I had to, beat his face up. And dude had a gun, wouldn't get rid of the gun. I mean, we had an officer get his hand broke. I mean, man, the worst part was just walking into all that pandemonium, and we're surrounded by people on every side. There's not a place for us to run for cover, or nowhere. We're just surrounded. Like, if these people wanted to kill us all right now, they could easily kill us. We couldn't do nothing. It was like 1,000 to 1. There's literally nothing we could do. And then it just broke loose, man. And I just remember taking off and just like we were just fighting for our lives out there. And the protesters and then all the rioters, they think they're fighting for their lives. They think that their cause is just and they're on the right side of history. But it's man, that ended, and I just remember riding this high, like, man, wow, the adrenaline was so real. But it got worse that night. That night at Brook and Jefferson, we got reports of protesters in the area, and remember we pulled up to Brook and Broadway, and we got off the bus, and that's when the shots got fired.
Yes,
and I remember hearing that supersonic zip, like, in the crack of the bullet, and I'm like, it took a second to register. You're like, oh crap, that's gunfire, man. I remember grabbing the guy in front of me and running back to the pillar, and taking cover behind that pillar, like just scanning the alley south looking for the shooter, man. And I just remember them saying, Major and Des are down. Major and Des are hit. We got 2 officers down. Officer down is scary enough, but it's the fact that officers down, plural, and I just remember them picking them up off the ground and throwing them into the back of the truck, and just sending them to the U of L hospital. And I don't know if y'all remember, but around a couple days before that, in Los Angeles, 2 LA County Sheriff deputies were shot and ambushed.
In their car.
Yep. And the protesters went to the hospital and blocked the entrance to keep them from getting in. So we're like Brook and Broadway, we're a good grip from the hospital. We didn't have any transportation. Because our cars were all part of the crime scene, so we couldn't leave. Yeah. So we thought that we had got word that the protesters were heading to the hospital. So we start beating feet down Broadway, like huffing it. We got all this gear on, and we're moving, man, like just breathing heavy, trying to get to the hospital to keep the protesters from trying to get there to block that entrance. But man, like we intercepted another group and ended up not able to get to the hospital, so we had to take care of that group. But man, once we took a tactical pause, like my phone just kept ringing, like because people were starting to see 2 officers were shot in Louisville, and man, and my phone was blowing
people
up.
were checking in on
Everybody was checking in, man. And it was not a time for me to have my face buried in my phone.
No,
texting people when there was still a guy out on the loose who had already proved that he's willing to kill the police and shoot it out with us. So, man.
Well, it's
Yeah.
and that lasted. I mean, how many days were you in a row?
Oh my God, I can't even tell you, man. It was all of May, all of 2020 from May on, and then I mean, it even went into 2021.
I guess
until the winter of 2021, it was where it really kind of fell off, man. I mean, we would get called down to the park every day. I mean, it was so lawless. I remember driving by, because I worked downtown. I remember driving by 6th and Jefferson, like seeing this lady getting stomped out at the park, and everybody like, move the fuck on. Yeah, fuck 12. And I want to get out and help this lady getting stumped at the park, but there's one of me, just a bunch of protesters, and it's just, and rioters, and I was just like, there's nothing I could do. And I just had to drive off.
It's me, and again, not to take this a totally different way, but the media didn't cover it.
No. It was a lot of it was sensationalized, and I'll tell people, man, the police department, we don't always get it right. We have some guys that put on this uniform that shouldn't be in this uniform.
Sure.
That's been proven time and time again. But man, to demonize an entire agency for a few people's mistakes, like that's, that you just can't do that, man. It's just like, when people, when I meet somebody that's black and they tell me like, all cops are bad, I'm like, how would you feel if somebody said that all black people were criminals? You want to fight against that, we've become so intellectually lazy in this country.
I agree.
100%.
It's just easier to paint everybody with a broad brushstroke and like they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case, man. And man, most of the people I work with on this department, I would say 99% of the officers that serve this city are great officers, man. You can trust these guys. But it's just the sensationalism with the news when you get that one bad cop or two. And then they, the whole saying, one ruins the whole bunch. And that's not necessarily true, man.
Yeah.
And it's been a uphill battle. And then, I will tell you all this. There's nothing I hate more than a cop that goes against the uniform and violates the trust of the public. Because, man, we work so hard in this profession to win back the public's trust, man. And when that happens, it is so infuriating to me. So I hate it. I got a buddy right now. I'm sure y'all followed the story of the officers that got in trouble for throwing drinks at people.
I'm not sure I know.
Yeah. Well, they're getting ready to go to jail for prison for 3 months. So
geez.
I know both of them.
Yeah.
Man, one of them I grew up with. Great dude. Awesome guy. And I've been talking to him, he's like, man.
Weakness, just a moment of weakness, or is it?
Man, I don't, it's hard to say what I think is, when you get caught up in the frat boy games and stuff, you get caught up in the crew and, nobody wants to be left out, and it's just like, man, I talked to him, I told him, I was like, Kurt, I love you. I know you're a good man, but I hate what you did.
Yeah.
I absolutely, and people think that just because, somebody does something bad, you have to completely disown them. No, you can still love the person and hate the actions.
Yep.
Like if you got a friend that's on drugs, you can still love them, but hate what they're doing. And I told him, like, I'm not turning my back on you, bro. Like, 'cause I know you. And they're trying to make him out to be a racist or a racial thing. It's not a racial thing. It was a stupidity thing, couple moments of bad decisions, man. And we're all good people, but good people sometimes do bad, irrational things.
Yeah, we're dumb.
He's extremely sorry. And some people are like, no, he's sorry he didn't get caught. I'm like, no, he's sorry because he knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because now he's losing all the time he spent here. And, the work we did to make this place better, he took it away from us, and he regrets that. He really does, because he was a good cop. But you have to, we have to have standards, man.
That's right.
And I tell a lot of people, I don't mind being held to a higher standard. We have to be held to a higher standard. When we have people's freedoms in our hands every day we operate, you have to hold us to a higher standard. Because if we make that one choice or that one bad mistake, that ruins it for everything, everybody, all the work we've done.
Right.
I don't mind being held to a higher standard, but my problem is we don't hold anybody else to a standard at all. It's just us being held to a standard.
Right. Well, with that, I think maybe that's a good time to kind of wrap it up, because I don't want the entire book, because I want people to still want to come see the book. And I have to say, this has been riveting. I mean,
no, it's a great episode. We appreciate you being here.
I'm
Dexter.
reading the book like this week, because this is awesome.
Can I ask him one quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Why do you think you're the only frontline officer? And not that it's been a long time, but 2020, we're past the 2 year that you maybe are one of the only frontlines to have at least come out in, written format to come out. Well, what's your quick philosophy on that, or what do you think?
It's because officers have become the public enemy number one. and a lot of guys are afraid to speak up because, man, policing has become so political, and it should never be that. And a lot of people fail to realize that because we're police officers, that doesn't mean that we have to be quiet and keep our mouth shut. We have to be careful in the way we say things, but we are American citizens just like anybody else. And I kind of want to take that step forward to encourage other officers that we all lived through 2020, man, anybody that wore this uniform. We all have a story, and it's important for the public to know the truth of what had happened and what it was really like and what really happened during that time. And if we don't tell these stories, man, it's going to die with us. And it was that day we got shot at Brook and Jefferson, at Brook and Broadway, where I decided I'm going to finish this book because I started writing this book 7 years ago. And I was like, man, if I die out here, this story's going to die with me. And somebody's going to tell my story for me, or somebody's going to tell my kids my story.
Well, Dexter, to help us, let alone the podcast, but tell your story. Do you have a website or any way that people, you even said you have your own podcast. Please share that.
Yeah, I got my own podcast, the Iron Pits podcast. I've been running it for about a year and 9 months now. And I talk about different things, what's going on in the city, policing, just give my opinion and input on some stuff, man. So like I said, you can find the Iron Pits podcast on any major podcasting app that you can find. Also, I do have a website. It's iampits.com. If you go there, you can click the links. You can get to Amazon and order a copy of the book. Or I tell people if they want to buy the book from me directly, and I'll send it to you and I'll sign it. Just send me an email at iampits@yahoo.com.
Thank you.
Also run my Instagram. I'm trying to get my Instagram up. So ladies, y'all have to understand, I am 38 years old. And my technology savvy is not that great. So I'm working on.
I'm right there with you.
Oh, brother, it's a struggle, man. Like everybody's like, he's trying to become a cop influencer. I don't want to be an influencer, man. Like I'm just a guy with a voice, and so I have Instagram. It's iampits1 on Instagram. So I just don't know how some people sit on their phone all day and posting. And to me, there's something real cringy about walking around with a giant stick and setting it up and putting on a phone on it and hitting record and hey, it's me, Iron Pits. I can't do that, man. So I'm kind of, like I say, I'm real behind. But if you could support the Iron Pits 1 Instagram page, also on Facebook, you can go to Iron Pits Memoirs of an American Patriot on Facebook. That's the Facebook page, man. And that's about all I got, gentlemen.
We're going to be seeking you out. We're so glad that we did this. So
I appreciate y'all having me, man. Y'all got a good thing going here.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dexter.
Good to see some good work coming out of Louisville.
Yeah, thank you. Check out Officer Pitts at all his things there. Give us a like, a follow, and a subscribe. We'll be back soon.
Thank you for listening. You can reach us at neil@talkabouttown.com. Neil is a realtor with Judah Real Estate Group. Chad is a partner at Insure Max. You can reach him at chadh@insuremax.com. Check us out on the web at talkabouttownky.com. Go Cards!